In the heart of a pristine suburban cul-de-sac, where manicured lawns gleamed under the morning sun and sprinklers whispered promises of order, a single act of defiance stood tall, a 6-foot wooden fence encircling Jack Harper's backyard. The fence, sturdy and unapologetic, it's a hair taller than the Homeowners Association's rigid bylaws allowed, and it had drawn the wrath of Karen Whitlock, the HOA's iron-fisted president. On this crisp morning, a sheriff's cruiser idled in front of Jack's modest 2-story home, its presence a stark contrast to the neighborhood's usual tranquility. Jack, a rugged man of 38 with calloused hands and a stubborn streak, stood on his porch, arms crossed, his flannel shirt catching the breeze. His wife, Lucy, hovered behind him, her face etched with worry but softened by loyalty. Across the street, Karen watched from her porch, her pinched face framed by a bob haircut sharper than her vindictive smirk, a clipboard clutched like a scepter. Of authority, the deputies, 2 weary men, accustomed to mediating petty disputes, approached Jack with measured steps, their boots crunching on the gravel driveway. They spoke of complaints, of HOA rules capping fences at 5.5 feet, of a violation that demanded correction within 7 days. Jack's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking to the fence he'd built with sweat and purpose after his dog. Emma was struck by a car a month prior. The fence wasn't just wood and nails. It was safety, a shield for his family. Karen's voice sliced through the air from across the street, shrill and self-righteous, accusing Jack of ruining the neighborhood's aesthetic. The word aesthetic grated on him, a hollow excuse for control. Lucy stepped forward, her voice steady as she cited county codes that permitted 6 feet. But the deputies, bound by protocol, reiterated the deadline, warning of fines, court, even liens if Jack refused to comply. Karen's smirk widened, savoring her perceived victory. But Jack's gaze hardened. He glanced at his fence, then at his house, a spark of rebellion igniting in his chest. As the deputies retreated to their cruiser, Jack turned to Lucy, a mischievous grin breaking through his frustration. He spoke of turrets, of castles, of turning their home into a fortress that would dwarf Karen's petty complaints. Lucy's eyes widened, torn between fear and amusement, but Jack's resolve was unshakable. If Karen wanted a war over 6 inches of wood, he'd give her a spectacle she'd never forget. The neighborhood, blissfully unaware, was about to witness a transformation that would redefine defiance. A month earlier, Jack Harper stood in his backyard, the summer sun beating down as he drove the final nail into his new fence. Sweat dripped from his brow, staining his faded t-shirt, but satisfaction warmed his chest. The 6-foot barrier crafted, with precision, encircled the yard where Emma, his scruffy mutt, bounded with joy, chasing a tennis ball. Lucy watched from the patio, her smile as bright as the lemonade pitcher she held. The fence was more than a project. It was a promise to keep Emma safe after a reckless driver had clipped her leg, leaving her limping for weeks. Jack had vowed never to let it happen again, and the fence stall, solid. Unyielding was his answer. The peace shattered with a sharp knock at the gate. Jack opened it to find Karen Whitlock, her clipboard, a constant companion. Her tape measure snapping against the fence's top edge. Her eyes, narrowed with disapproval, met his as she declared the fence 6 feet high, a clear violation of the HOA's 5.5-foot limit. Jack's explanation county code allowed it, and Emma's safety demanded it fell on deaf ears. Karen's voice dripped with condescension as she cited bylaws, covenants, and the sanctity of community standards. Lucy joined him, her tone conciliatory, pleading for reason, but Karen's smirk only deepened. She issued a warning: 30 days to comply, or the matter would escalate to the HOA board. With a final glare, she stalked off, her heels clicking on the pavement, leaving Jack fuming and Lucy uneasy. That night, in the warm glow of their living room, Jack and Lucy pored over the HOA bylaws. Papers strewn across the coffee table, the television murmured in the background, ignored. Lucy's finger traced lines of legalese, confirming the HOA's strict control over exterior modifications. Jack, leaning back on the couch, found a lifeline in the county code, which trumped the HOA's rules. His resolve hardened. The fence would stay. Lucy cautioned restraint, aware of Karen's influence over the neighborhood, but Jack's grin was defiant. If Karen wanted to wield her clipboard like a weapon, he'd meet her challenge head-on. Over the next weeks, Karen's campaign unfolded with relentless precision. She knocked on doors, her voice a blend of charm and indignation. As she rallied neighbors against Jack's fence, some nodded, swayed by her talk of property values. Others shrugged, indifferent. At an HOA meeting, Karen projected images of the fence onto a screen, labeling it a blight. The board, stacked with her allies, voted to issue a formal violation notice. A letter arrived at Jack's door, demanding the fence's removal or modification within 14 days, threatening fines. Jack and Lucy consulted a lawyer, a grizzled man who confirmed the HOA's rules were legally shaky, but advised compliance to avoid a costly fight. Across the street, Karen watched Jack's house, her camera clicking, her smirk a constant taunt. The deputy's visit marked the tipping point. Their warning 7 days to comply or face escalation echoed in Jack's mind as they drove away. Lucy's plea to lower the fence, to avoid a legal quagmire, hung in the air, but Jack's eyes gleamed with rebellion. Karen's vendetta wasn't about the fence. It was about control, about bending him to her will. He refused to yield. Sketches of turrets and battlements filled his notepad, his vision taking shape. Lucy laughed, half convinced he was joking. But Jack's grin was unwavering. The neighborhood was about to meet its new lord. In the pristine confines of Karen Whitlock's living room, where every cushion was fluffed to perfection and the air smelled faintly of lavender, a war room took shape. Papers littered her dining table, AOA bylaws, violation notices, photos. Of Jack's fence, Karen sat at the table's head, her eyes blazing with righteous fury. Her husband, Marcus, a mild-mannered accountant, sipped coffee across from her, his gaze fixed on his mug to avoid her intensity. Karen's voice filled the room, decrying Jack's defiance as an affront to the community she'd sworn to protect. Marcus's tentative suggestion to let the matter go was met with a scoff. To Karen, the fence was a symbol of chaos, a crack in the orderly facade she'd cultivated as HOA president. She picked up her phone, her fingers swift as she dialed. A contact to discuss liens, her tone cold and unyielding. Karen's crusade gained momentum at the next HOA meeting. It's held in a sterile community hall packed with neighbors. She stood at the podium, her gavel striking with authority as she presented Jack's fence as a threat to the neighborhood's harmony. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some supportive, others skeptical. Karen's slideshow, complete with zoomed-in photos of the fence's offending 6 inches, drew groans from a few, but her allies on the board nodded gravely. A vote passed to escalate the violation, authorizing daily fines until Jack complied. As the meeting adjourned, Karen's eyes locked with Jack's, her smirk a promise of further retribution. The fines began arriving, each notice a stab at Jack's resolve. The first was $50, then $100, stacking daily like a ticking clock. Lucy's worry deepened, her nights spent calculating their savings against the mounting penalties. Jack, undeterred, scoured the internet for loopholes. His evenings, filled with zoning laws and precedent cases, discovered a clause in the county code allowing decorative structures up to 8 feet without permits. A vague term that sparked an idea. His sketches evolved, turrets joined by battlements, a drawbridge, even a moat. Lucy's laughter turned to cautious intrigue as Jack outlined his plan. If Karen wanted to enforce aesthetics, he'd give her an aesthetic she couldn't ignore. Karen's tactics grew bolder. She organized a petition collecting signatures to pressure the county to align with HOA rules. She enlisted a surveyor to measure Jack's fence publicly, drawing curious neighbors to their lawns. The surveyor, a nervous young man, confirmed the 6-foot height, prompting Karen's triumphant nod. She filed a formal complaint with the county, accusing Jack of code violations, though the county's response was tepid, citing their own regulations. Undeterred, Karen escalated to threats of a lien, her letters arriving with increasing frequency, each one a taunt. Jack's defiance took root in the community. Neighbors, initially neutral, began to split. Some, tired of Karen's overreach, offered Jack quiet support, sharing stories of her past crusades. Others, loyal to her vision of uniformity, shunned Jack's family, their glares sharp as they passed his house. Le cul-de-sac, once a haven of neighborly chats, crackled with tension. Jack's fence became a symbol of rebellion for some, disrespect for others. Through it all, Karen watched, her clipboard ever present, her resolve unyielding. Jack Harper's rebellion began in earnest on a quiet Saturday morning. When a delivery truck rumbled into the cul-de-sac, unloading stacks of lumber, stone, and steel onto his front lawn, neighbors peered through curtains, their curiosity piqued. By the sight of Jack directing the delivery, his flannel sleeves rolled up, his grin wide. Lucy stood beside him, her initial skepticism giving way to amusement as Jack explained his vision: a castle, not just in name but in form, built within the county's vague allowance for decorative structures. The fence would stay, but it would be dwarfed by turrets, battlements, and a facade that screamed defiance. The transformation unfolded over weeks, each day bringing new spectacles to the neighborhood. Jack, a skilled carpenter, worked alongside hired contractors, their hammers ringing through the cul-de-sac. The first turret rose at the house's corner, a cylindrical tower of stone topped with a conical roof. Neighbors gawked, some amused, others appalled. Karen's porch became her command post, her camera flashing as she documented every nail, her complaints flooding the HOA's inbox. The board, pressured by her, issued new violations, citing unauthorized modifications, but Jack's lawyer, armed with the county's code, rebuffed them. The castle, he argued, was decorative, not structural, and thus exempt. The drawbridge was next, a wooden gate lowered by chains, spanning a shallow moat dug along the front yard. Emma splashed happily in the water, her tail wagging as children. From the neighborhood gathered, their laughter echoing. Jack's castle became a local legend, drawing curious onlookers from beyond the cul-de-sac. Social media buzzed with photos, hashtags like #CastleGuy trending locally. Karen's fury grew, her petitions now targeting the county's lax codes. But the public's fascination with Jack's project drowned her out. The battlements crowned the house, crenellated stone, giving it a medieval silhouette. Jack added flourishes, a flag with a cartoon dog, Emma's likeness, flying atop a turret. Gargoyles perched on the eaves, their faces suspiciously resembling Karen's scowl. Lucy, now fully on board, painted murals of knights and dragons on the garage door, her artistic flair adding whimsy to the fortress. The neighborhood's children declared Jack's house the coolest, her parents torn between admiration and HOA loyalty. Karen's final gambit came at a county hearing, where she pleaded for an injunction to halt Jack's construction. By her allies, she argued the castle lowered property values, disrupted harmony, and mocked the HOA's authority. Jack, in a flannel suit, presented his case with charm, citing codes, safety, and community support. The room, packed with neighbors, erupted in cheers when he unveiled a petition of his own, signed by dozens who loved the castle. The county, unmoved by Karen's hysterics, ruled in Jack's favor, citing compliance with their regulations. Castle's completion marked a turning point. Karen's influence waned, her allies distancing themselves as the neighborhood embraced Jack's creation. The cul-de-sac hosted a medieval-themed block party, with Jack's castle as the centerpiece. Its drawbridge lowered for guests. Karen, isolated on her porch, watched in silence, her clipboard abandoned. Jack and Lucy stood atop a turret, Emma at their side, their victory not just a structure, but a reclaiming of their home. The fence, once a spark, was now a footnote in. A fortress that stood for defiance, creativity, and the unyielding spirit of a man who refused to bend.